Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Please visit audible.com/richdad for a free audiobook download. Howdy guys, this is Derek, one of the producers of the Rich Dad Radio Show. As someone who spends all day in their headphones, I've been using Audible for years now. Audible is the audiobook service with over 180,000 audiobooks on every subject you could imagine. Audible gives you access to every type of audio media you can think of. News, history, self-improvement, fiction, and they don't just have bargain bin stuff. You can download Stephen King, David Sedaris, Tim Ferriss, Seth Godin. I'm listening to the Game of Thrones series right now so that nobody else can spoil the HBO show for me. In fact, I just finished Ready Player One, read by Will Wheaton, and it's one of the best audiobooks I've ever heard. Give it a try. You can get a 30-day free trial and a free audiobook download by going to audible.com/richdad. That's audible.com/richdad.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we have a very important show to you because, as we all know, there's three things that we all need in life. One is called health, wealth, and happiness. And generally we talk about health occasionally. We talk about wealth a lot. But today we're going to talk about a very important subject called happiness. And the reason I want to talk about happiness personally is because I hear a lot of people come up to me who are flat broke, and then they have no wealth, and they say to me, well, I'd rather be happy than rich like you. I go, well, why can't you have it all? Do you know what I mean? Why can't you have it all? No. If you're wealthy, you can't be happy. And then I meet other idiots. I mean, I sit there and listen to these people telling me they must think I'm some kind of therapist or something. Then they come up to me and say, well, when I'm rich, then I'll be happy. And I go, what a stupid idea that is. Do you know what I mean? What a stupid idea. So once again, the subject is health, wealth, and today, happiness. And if I give you a little story here is that, even being rich, you can get depressed. Like a few years ago, I had it all. I do have it all. I have a most fabulous wife, a great marriage, fabulous company, working with great people, and more money than I could ever spend. But the problem was that song kept coming into my head, is that all there is, my friend? I have it all, but now I'm not happy. So what happened to the happiness? But anyway, it's because I had it all, but I wasn't any happier. Like, I'm not really religious, but I believe there's a God. And one day, this guy flew me to Lake Tahoe, and I was given a book called The Miracle Morning. And then the next day, I flew to Georgetown University to Will Finnerty's class, and he handed me a book called The Happiness Advantage. So when you get two books on the same subject, I think God's trying to tell me something. And so I'm very happy today to have the author of The Happiness Advantage, Shawn Achor, and his book has just transformed my life because it's something as important as health and wealth, and that's happiness. Anything you want to say, Kim?
Oh, this is going to be a great show because Shawn really turns things on its head. And I've got to say, I have an ebook called Happiness, and now it's going to change. That's going to change everything. This book is going to change everything. But here's what I think the premise of what Shawn is saying, and we'll have him respond to this, is everybody says, once I'm successful, I'll be happy. Once I have $1 million, I'll be happy. Once I have my new Lamborghini, I'll be happy. And what Shawn is saying, no, we got it all backwards. Happiness fuels the success. Happiness fuels you making more money. It's happiness first, then success follows.
So can I add one more thing, though?
Yeah.
I was happy when I was going for it.
Yes.
And then when I made it, I wasn't happy. So I'm going, what happened, And so that's why like I said, there has to be a God, because in 1 week I get 2 books. So I'm really happy to welcome to the show Shawn Achor, and because he's made me very happy. Everybody in our company is reading his book, and my advisors are reading his book because happiness is part of the trio: health, wealth, and happiness. So welcome to the program, Shawn.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
So, Shawn, let's start with, what's your definition of happiness?
Oh, that's a great question. Because I think a lot of people, when they think about happiness, they think exactly what Robert was describing. They think about pleasure, right? They think, if, they open a certain soda can, or they win a race, or they get a raise, or they hit some net worth, then they'll be happier. But that definition of pleasure is very limiting and very short-lived. I got actually started doing this research back when I was at the divinity school. And one of the things that the ancient Greeks I learned, they defined happiness. The ancient Greeks defined happiness not as pleasure, but they defined happiness as the joy you feel growing towards your potential. And I love this definition because it changes the pursuit of happiness, right? Because pleasure is something that's very short-lived. Joy you can feel even when life is not pleasurable. When you're working long hours on a project you find to be meaningful, which is what you were just describing, you love the process of making it and becoming successful. You going on a long run, you can feel pain in your legs, and yet you can feel joy even in the midst of childbirth. But the other part of it is, I think a lot of people are afraid of happiness, and I think that they're afraid of happiness because they think that if they're happy, they'll stop. If they're happy, they'll become complacent. That's what pleasure does, but joy does the exact opposite. Yeah. Joy actually fuels us to want to see our potential. It makes us want to invest more deeply in the people around us and see how much we could actually make this a better external world for all of us.
Right. President Kennedy has something similar to that. He says happiness is something along lines of excellence. When you're pursuing your potential. Yeah, being the best you can be,
Yeah.
So
because I think a lot of people think, everything has to be great in my life for me to be happy.
So Shawn, you went to Harvard for 25 years. Let's give us your background, how you left Texas and went to Harvard and came upon your study called happiness.
I grew up in Waco, Texas, and had no idea that I was going to go to Harvard. I applied there on a dare, and my family didn't have any money to go to a place like that that's so expensive. I was going to go to a military academy. I know you have a military background. I went and I applied to the Naval Academy. I got an acceptance letter from Harvard, and 3 weeks later got a Navy scholarship that paid for the whole opportunity to go.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful because of the military, because for two reasons. One, it allowed something that wasn't even going to be a possibility become a reality for this kid in Waco. But also, I had the best preparation ever for college, which was boot camp. And I was so used to, people giving you trophies even though you lose at soccer games, or people constantly praising you, and for people to be yelling at you for not doing push-ups before you even get off the bus. It really required you to develop that sense of ownership and accountability, which actually was going to be important to the research I was going to do later on about how happiness is a choice.
So did you go to Navy prep school before you went to Harvard?
I didn't. I did ROTC over the summers as a high school student.
I see.
But I went to a normal public high school in Waco.
And so what happened at Harvard for you?
Well, so I was so thrilled to be there. I felt like it was such a privilege. And then I met all of these students. I spent 4 years as an undergraduate there, then 8 as a researcher. And I actually lived in the dorms with the freshmen after college to help counsel them during that first year. And Harvard invited me to. I wasn't that guy who just stays around in the freshman dorm. But part of what I saw was that no matter how happy they were with the success that they had last year, they got into a school that they worked so hard to get into. 3 weeks after being there, their brains weren't focused on the privilege of being there, nor even fully focused on their work. Their brain became scattered, thinking about the competition, workload, stresses, hassles, and complaints. And very quickly, what should have caused great happiness wasn't, right? 80% of these students go through depression. 10% of them contemplate suicide. Jeez. And this is at a school that people want so badly to be able to go to. And people are so excited when they get in. And since those 12 years, I've traveled to 50 countries and researched what actually causes happiness and the connection between happiness and success. And what I started realizing was that this story at Harvard had nothing to do with just Harvard. This literally was the story about how every single human brain in the world contemplates the connection between our previous successes, our happiness, and what we think is going to happen in the future.
So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Shawn Achor. He's the author of The Happiness Advantage, which came out in 2010. Like I said, I'm reading it third time now, and every time I read it, that's why we can recommend repetition, is I pick up something new because I'm different when I'm rereading the book. And his latest book is called Before Happiness, 5 Hidden Keys to Achieving Success, Spreading Happiness, and Sustaining Positive Change. Great title. And his website is goodthinkinc.com. And today our subject is about health, wealth, and especially happiness. And as I said, I was very happy going for everything, but once I achieved it, almost a depression set in, and I was down for about a year and a half, very miserable person. And I kept looking out of the world going, how can I be miserable? I have a gorgeous wife, we're happily married, great house, more money, great company, great people to work with, but I was miserable. So that's what this program's about. It's because so many people say, well, I'd rather be happy than rich. Well, my thing is, why can't we have both? And so that's why I have Shawn Achor on, because I want you guys to have both. I want you to have all three: health, wealth, and happiness. Comments, Kim?
Yeah, so Shawn, my question is, if as these people at Harvard and throughout the world, you notice that they're depressed or they're not happy, and you're saying it's a choice, what caused the students to not be happy?
That's a great question. I think it's because they were willing to sacrifice happiness in the present because they thought if they really, are stressed and they add on all this workload and they can achieve some sort of goal, then they'll feel happier. That follows this formula, which is if you work harder, you'll be more successful and then you'll be happier. And I think that undergirds a lot of people's thoughts about wealth. It undergirds our parenting styles, our leadership styles. But when we started doing research at Harvard on happiness in this field called positive psychology, we actually found that that formula was scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. And the first reason is every time your brain actually has a success, every time you do hit one of those goals, your brain already has changed the goalpost of what success looks like, right? If you get good grades in school, don't get excited. You need to get into a better school. Is
that why I need my 4th Ferrari?
Right?
Shawn, I got to come home and tell Kim about my Ferrari or my next Rolls Royce. And she looks at me like I'm some kind of whack job,
Yeah, I think that our brains just naturally do that, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good thing, actually, because
Yeah.
it causes us to keep moving towards our potential
Amen.
instead of stagnating.
Amen. So when we come back, we'll be talking to Shawn about this most important subject. It's called happiness. Because as we say at Rich Dad, why don't you have it all? Health, wealth, and happiness. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome to Capital City, from the mind of Robert Kiyosaki. Capital City, we've got everything. Dog groomers, candy stores, game shops, and you can own it all. Break away from the evil supercore by buying up businesses and properties that put big old piles of cash in your pockets. Choose from 11 crazy vehicles. Explore the streets of Capital City and build the empire of your dreams. You can play Capital City with up to 5 friends, or take on the evil supercore robots. Capital City, now available on the App Store and Google Play. Capital City, it's not just fun, it's crazy fun.
It pays to listen. Now, back to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show on your time and your schedule because we have a Rich Dad Radio app, which is available at the App Store. And all of our broadcasts are archived at richdadradio.com. And the reason we archive them is we practice what we preach. I believe in repetition is how we really learn. So as I said, I've read Shawn's book 3 times now, and every time I read it, I learn something new, although I'm rereading it. So, Kim, what was the point you want to bring up?
Well, Shawn, we were talking at the break, and you brought up a really good point in your studies that you found about happiness.
This is one of my favorite parts about this happiness research. So many people say, I'd rather be happy than rich, or I'd rather be rich and then I'll feel happier. What's amazing is once we started doing this research in 50 countries on what causes happiness, what we discovered is that the greatest competitive advantage in the modern economy is actually a positive and engaged brain. And the reason for that is when your brain is positive, instead of being negative or stressed or even neutral, when your brain is positive, dopamine flows through your brain, which actually turns on all of the learning centers in your brain. It turns on the prefrontal cortex in your brain, which causes you to see more opportunities in your environment. It's why it's one of the greatest predictors of entrepreneurial success. It actually increases our intelligence. It triples our creativity. We found that when the human brain is positive, you have 37% higher chances of sales, or sales rise by 37%, productive energy by 31%, your likelihood of promotion by 40%. So all of this is to indicate that we can now not only quantify people's levels of happiness, but actually quantifies changes to people's levels of happiness. And when somebody becomes happier by doing the things that Robert and Kim are describing, by creating these positive habits within your life, repeating and listening to things that are going to move you forward, it turns out if you can get your brain to positive and happy, every single business and educational outcome we know how to test for rises dramatically. Happiness is an incredible advantage.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Shawn Achor. He is the author of The Happiness Advantage. His latest book is Before Happiness, 5 Hidden Keys to Achieving Success, Spreading Happiness, and Sustaining Positive Change. Came out in 2013. His website is goodthinkinc.com. And he is a student from Harvard. He's worked with thousands of kids out there, young students. And he's talking about a very important subject. It is called happiness. So the question I have for you, Shawn, is this: one of the things I work at and Kim works at in this company, we want to make sure the people that work here are happy. They feel their work is important, that the mission of the company is important, and all that. Yet I see a lot of other people, they just sit in front of the clock and can't wait to go home. This is not our company. So what would you say to somebody who is unhappy at work? What can they do?
There's a lot of things that we could do to increase our levels of happiness. I think the most exciting thing actually is most people, and I think that this resonates with your philosophies as well, is that I think so many people in the world think that happiness is out of their control. If you ask somebody why they're unhappy, they'll say it's something about their external world. I don't like my boss. I don't like my job.
My wife, my husband, the kids.
I'm in debt.
Something outside of them, yes.
Or they'll say it's their genes, right? That I can't be happy because I've got depression in my family, or it's my neurochemicals, or some people are just born happy. All of that's true for the average person. And the reason for that is when we study, most of the science is based upon the average, and we found that the average person doesn't fight their genes or their environment. But if somebody actually decides to cultivate some positive habits within their life, if they decide to choose happiness, we actually find that you can escape the tyranny of your genes and your environment and actually cultivate and choose happiness within your life by doing even very simple positive habits within your life.
Like what? Like what kind of habits?
Some of those ones that somebody could be doing if they're feeling negative at work, or even if you're not, if you just want to give yourself that competitive advantage. We've been researching the smallest interventions you can make in your life that will have long-term impact. So we found something as simple as getting somebody every day for 21 days in a row to think of 3 new things that they're grateful for that have occurred over the past 24 hours, and to be specific about it. Not just say, I'm grateful for my son, Leo. That actually doesn't work. But if you say, I'm grateful for my son, he gave me a hug this morning, which means I'm loved regardless. If you do that, think of 3 new things you're grateful for each day. 21 days later, you have 63 things you're grateful for, which is incredibly robust, but not even the point. What we found is that if you do this, your brain pattern actually changes. You unconsciously start scanning the world for the things that are positive, as well as the fires you need to put out within your life. And what we found is your financial decision-making improves, your happiness increases, your stress levels begin to drop. We can get somebody who is a default genetic pessimist who's practiced pessimism for 8 decades of their life. They do this habit for 21 days in a row, and they actually become a low-level optimist, and we can sustain it. So let me pause really quickly to say, everyone who's listening knows gratitude is good for you, right? But the cool thing about this research, which I never would have believed before the science, is that 2 minutes could actually trump your genes and your environment. That's the amazing part. There are other very simple things. I'll tell you some quick things that people could do. They're very practical. We found that if you take your hands off your keyboard for 2 minutes a day and just go from multitasking to just watching your breath go in and out, you go from multitasking to single tasking, and then 2 minutes later, you go right back to your work. Just watching your breath for 2 minutes increases your accuracy rates by 10% and dramatically increases your levels of happiness. We've been doing that one in Google. And one of the most powerful ones we've seen is we had people every day for 21 days in a row write a positive email or text message for 2 minutes maximum, praising or thanking just one person that they know, just a family member, a teacher, a coworker, a friend. You write a 2-minute text message or email praising them or thanking them for something. 21 days later, when we test your levels of social connection, your score is off the chart. And you've gotten these great emails back from other people as well. But the great part about this is social connection is the greatest predictor of long-term happiness we have. And this is one of my favorite statistics. Another researcher just found that social connection is as predictive of how long you will end up living as obesity, high blood pressure, or smoking. We fight so hard against the negative, and we forget to tell people that 2 minutes of positive could actually lead not only to greater levels of health, but greater levels of wealth in our life as well.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki of the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Shawn Achor. His books are The Happiness Advantage and Before Happiness. And we're talking about a very important subject called happiness. And, Shawn, in your book, one of the things that you have in The Happiness Advantage, you have 7 things. And one of the things was called the Tetris effect. And the Tetris effect, really hit me is because we all are trained to focus on looking at certain things. What made me happy was that you said most attorneys are unhappy. And so that was really, really happy for me.
That was good revenge.
Because who's making me unhappy are my attorneys.
There you go.
But anyway...
Well, it might make you happy, Robert, to know that lawyers are 3 times more depressed than the average occupation.
There you go.
I know. I'm so happy to hear they deserve it, and all this. As you can tell, what makes me happy doesn't make other people happy. But anyway, would you mind explaining the Tetris effect? Because what you're talking about is kind of how to control how you look at the world, right?
Yeah. This is really cool. We found that if you have somebody play this video game called Tetris, where they make straight lines while playing this game out of these blocks, if you make them play it for 5 hours, the rest of the day, their brain scans the world for how to make straight lines out of everything. They're rearranging bread on the shelves at supermarkets to make straight lines, all these crazy things. They're dreaming about Tetris. But if you look at the world through the same pattern for too long, your brain keeps that pattern. So I've been working with tax auditors, for example, who look at tax forms, probably somebody else you don't like as well, in addition to lawyers, Robert. But the tax auditors, as they're going through forms, they're looking for your mistakes and errors, which make them great at their job. But when they become tax audit managers, when they're leading other people, they've never been trained to do anything but look for the problems. So their brain gets stuck in that Tetris effect, that Tetris pattern, where they scan the world looking for the mistakes. Their brain is great at that, but it's not been trained to look for the positive. And one of the auditors I worked with, he told me that he was feeling depressed at work, and I asked him what he was doing to fix it, and he said, I've tried everything. One day at lunch, he sat at his desk and he made an Excel spreadsheet, and he made a list of all the mistakes he felt like his wife had been making in their relationship. Printed it out and brought it home to his wife.
Oh,
Kim
my God.
I do the same thing at home there,
that,
Shawn.
I can predict that fight.
And
I hate to say this, but I after I read, I don't know what number of the 7 it was, I said, holy mackerel, that's what I did with Kim.
yeah, it's so
I don't do a
easy.
spreadsheet because I'm not that smart, but I do it in my head. And
I didn't know that.
But that's why I'm encouraging. I wanted you on the program, and I wanted people to encourage them to read the book at least 3 times, the 7 things, and you'll pick up how you're actually intentionally or unintentionally making yourself unhappy. And if you can change that, you become happier. And I just wasn't even aware that I did that. That's how powerful your book is.
It's an unconscious pattern, and the cool part is you can break it. So for those lawyers, I mean, I thought maybe the law self-selects negative people, but one of my colleagues, Elizabeth Peterson, went in and tested them and found out before people go to law school, they're actually really normal. They have average levels of optimism compared to the national average.
Normal.
They're so normal. But 3 months later, they've got triple the rates of pessimism. So the way that they're learning about the world is changing the way that they see the world. And we can change that by the books we read, about the way that we watch the news, about the way that we create these positive habits in our life. So with those auditors and lawyers, what we get them to do now is we actually get their brain to train. Just like you're training a bicep and an arm to get stronger, we train them to look for the things that are going on right, or the strengths that they have, or to journal each day for 2 minutes about one positive experience that they've had. And when that happens, it turns out their brains change and they actually become not only more optimistic, but they feel greater levels of happiness and meaning, and it translates into better business outcomes, not only for them, but for the company as well.
Yeah, but I still haven't given my attorney your book, so don't worry.
So I have a question, Shawn. You actually had depression, right?
I did. It's a great question. Yeah, I had this experience. I have to tell you about it very quickly, but I had this experience last year where my son Leo was born last February, and my wife told me, you can't travel anywhere this month. You can't go anywhere for work unless Oprah calls. Just joking. And Oprah called. I got to go out to her house, to her backyard, to talk about happiness and how happiness leads to success, many of the things we've talked about here. And at the end of the interview, they were shutting down the lights, and I turned to her and I said, it's so easy for people to see me and say, well, of course a happiness researcher is happy. I mean, he's married to a happiness researcher too. Of course he's happy. And of course Oprah's happy, right? Look at all of her opportunities and her wealth and her houses everywhere. And she told me then that she went through depression at the height of her career when Beloved didn't do as well as she was wanting it to. And that's when she was making the most money ever. And I went through 2 years of depression while I was at Harvard at this incredible opportunity. So she turned back on the cameras and we did a whole extra hour about how somebody can walk themselves out of depression. And what is exciting about this, the research shows that depression's not the end of the story. You can actually take control and move yourself from a depressed state to a positive state, not only by making a mindset shift, but actually you have to make habit shifts. We found that if you exercise for just 15 minutes a day, it's the equivalent of taking an antidepressant for the first 6 months. But for the next 2 years, you have a 30% lower likelihood of actually getting depressed again. And the reason for that is exercise is the starter drug. When you exercise, you believe your behavior matters and you start creating entire constellations of positive habits. We actually found that if you journal about a positive experience, and this is one of the ones that pulled me out of depression, each day you look for one meaningful experience, and then in 2 minutes on a napkin at Starbucks or in a blank Word document, you just write down every detail you can remember about that one positive experience. You're trying to get your brain to relive it because your brain can't tell the difference between visualization and actual experience. So you literally double the most meaningful day in your life, most meaningful moment in your day. And if you do it for 21 days in a row, your brain connects the dots for you. And as a result of that, we can actually create these buffers and barriers against depression and move us back to a place of not only optimism, but happiness.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Shawn Achor. His book is called The Happiness Advantage. Like I said, we're encouraging our people in our company to read it. All my advisors are reading the book. And because Rich Dad really believes in health, wealth, and happiness. When we come back, we'll be finding out more from Shawn what you and I can do to be happier.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money.
Today's show is brought to you by Casper. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/richdad and using the promo code RICHDAD. Guys, these mattresses aren't just engineered, they're obsessively engineered at a shockingly fair price. Just the right sink, just the right bounce. How do they do this? They combine latex foam technology and memory foam technology for better nights and brighter days. That's double the foam technology of typical mattresses. You get a risk-free trial, sleep on your Casper for 100 days with free delivery and painless returns. Another bonus, Caspers are made in America, not one of those lame countries. You can get a Casper mattress for as little as $500 for a twin or $950 for a king-sized mattress. You cannot beat that price. Just go to casper.com/richdad and use the code RICHDAD to get an additional $50 off your purchase. Casper mattresses. Better sleep for brighter days.
Rich Dad says good debt makes you rich and bad debt makes you poor. In Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton's book, The ABCs of Getting Out of Debt, you'll learn the strategies for avoiding and overcoming bad debt, as well as using good debt to your advantage. This book gives you the tools to turn today's credit environment to your benefit. Repair your own credit or beat the lenders at their own game. Order your copy of Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton's book, The ABCs of Getting Out of Debt, today at Amazon.com.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And once again, you can listen to this program at your time on your schedule with the Rich Dad Radio app, available at the App Store. And we also archive all of these programs at richdadradio.com. And the reason we archive them is because repetition is how we learn. It's like kind of erasing the old brain patterns and putting new ones in. And this one is a very important program because if you want to be happy, it is, in my opinion, the big reason, or more people who are happy are successful. But we also know that many people say, I'd rather be happy than rich. And then I say, well, why can't you have both? And most of the people I meet who say that aren't happy. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of justifying it. And then there's something, well, money doesn't make you happy. Well, obviously you're not happy, so you must be missing something. And the third one is, when I'll be happy when I'm rich, stuff like that. So Shawn and I and Kim were talking about it, and I was very happy when I was becoming rich. And then one day I reached it. One day I realized, about a year and a half ago, I realized I reached it. I couldn't spend all the money I had. I had built a perfect company, very happy company, great friends and all this. I had achieved it. Great wife, great marriage. And I got depressed. And so for a year and a half, I was in kind of a depression. But for me, getting rich was the happy part. It was what I was doing. So now I had time. I needed to move on. And so the reason I have Shawn Achor on this program right now is I think all of us can be happier, and we all can move on and become more successful. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about, too, is one of the things that is of value to you and me, Robert, is lifelong learning. And when we're learning, it's something new, we're discovering, we're growing.
It's called personal development.
Yeah. And
mentally, emotionally, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah, and when I learn something new, that to me is very powerful and very positive and very uplifting.
But Shawn, I'm a real sick guy. There's people I hate. I'm really glad when they're unhappy. What do we want to say about that? You know what I mean? That's not good, is it?
Probably not.
Okay.
All right. So there's a lot. You talk about 7 principles that lead to happiness, and you have a thing called the 20-second rule. Would you explain what the 20 seconds? Because it's something very simple that anybody can do, right?
Yeah. So I think if for people who have listened to the show for a while, that they know all these good things that they should be doing, but
should. That's a great word. Should. We all know we should be doing it.
I got interested in researching this because I wanted to find out if these positive habits only take 2 minutes that we just talked about to create happiness, and it leads to 40% increase in promotion, it leads to all these success rates, it triples our revenue, all these different types of things. Why wouldn't we do it? And so what's getting in the way? What's the barrier to happiness? And what I realized was it was actually really small. When we did the research, we found it was 3 to 20 seconds. And let me explain very quickly. What we found was if you're trying to create a positive habit, you have something called activation energy. It requires energy to create that new habit. If you want to stop a negative habit, by the way, it also takes energy to be able to do that. So I realized I had all these, I had a guitar. I had a guitar sitting in my common room when I was at Harvard, and I was going to play every day, and I knew it would be good if I played, and I played no days. And it was sitting actually at that point in a case in my closet. So I pulled it out of the case, put it on a stand, and for 21 days in a row tried to play it. And it turns out I ended up playing 20 of the 21 days. It was extremely simple. I just walk past it, and I'd be like, oh, I'll play, and I'd play it. And what I realized was I took a stopwatch and found it only took me 20 seconds to get the guitar out of the case and out of the closet. But that 20 seconds was enough for my brain to say it takes forever to get the guitar out of the closet, and I would never play it. I found that same pattern held in other ways. Like I found that if I took the batteries out of my remote control for my television and walked those batteries 20 seconds away to my bedroom, I found that my likelihood of watching television dropped dramatically because my brain was like, oh, it takes forever to go get those batteries. So what we started realizing was if we could just change the energy patterns by 3 to 20 seconds, we could actually get you to do all those positive changes, all those positive habits that we were wanting to do. So for example, I wanted to exercise in the morning. I'm not really a morning person, but every morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, do you want to go exercise? And my brain would say, no, I do not. Where are my clothes? Where are my shoes? What part of my body am I going to exercise? And by that point, I'd have fallen back asleep. So what I did was I just went to sleep in my gym clothes. So the night before, I moved my shoes next to my bed, fell asleep in my gym clothes. When I woke up in the morning, I didn't have to take the minute or the little bit of time it would take to put on those clothes. I was ready to just roll out of bed and start exercising. And the reason why this is important, if you want to create a positive habit in your life, the very first thing you need to do is determine how to make it easier. If you want to start journaling, you put a journal right on your bedside. If you want to do gratitudes, you say those gratitudes every day when you're already brushing your teeth so you don't even have to think about it. If you're going to exercise, you make sure you have a bag packed and you do it at the same time each day. Anything you can do to make those positive changes just 3 to 20 seconds easier makes them a much higher likelihood of doing it. And if you have a negative habit, do the opposite.
Well, the thing that was powerful about that section in your book, The Happiness Advantage, was you talk about why willpower doesn't work. And what you said would really hit me because, I go on a diet and, in the morning and by lunchtime I'm off the diet. I have no willpower. You know what I mean? But your insights into willpower, how if you're struggling against willpower, you actually get weaker. Is that kind of what you were saying?
It's exactly true. You can strengthen your willpower, but it takes a lot of energy. What's even better for that is not even have that problem. So, for example, if cookies are your big problem, when you're at the supermarket, you just make sure you don't buy cookies, right? Or if you accidentally bought those cookies, I know some people that eat the frozen dough or the that's what
chocolate
they do.
chip dough.
Yeah. What they've done is they have it at the bottom of their freezer and they put it at the very bottom and then they stack all this frozen fruit on top of it or other things that are healthier so that if they really want to get to it, they actually have to spend 20 seconds to go through all that. Meanwhile, they have fruit or something that they actually really want to eat out on the counters. That's so much easier. So what you're simply doing is you're trying to make the positive habit easier and the harder habits harder, or the better,
right,
the habits harder to do.
But this is the part I found about that chapter so important. You said that if a person is struggling with willpower, their ability to solve quote unquote problems actually goes down.
Yeah, this is amazing, right? Like if you're trying really hard to diet or you're trying really hard not to eat some cookies that are in front of you, your ability to make financial decisions and to not jump out of a stock when you're in it, when you should stay in it, it actually gets so much worse. So you burn it out in one part of your life, and meanwhile in other parts of your life, you actually realize you have no willpower. So for example, if you're having to use a ton of willpower at work to really focus on something that's very stressful, it turns out your ability to diet drops dramatically at that point because that muscle is already exhausted from spending a whole day having to use it all the time. So what we really try and do is we try and make those choices easier for you so that if you're really working on one positive habit, you're not trying to do a million positive habits all at once. You really focus your limited willpower on creating that one positive habit, and then you give your brain some time to relax,
Right.
cancel some of the noise. We were talking earlier. I love our discussion about how we need to cancel some of that noise in our life, that oftentimes listening to too much negative news actually causes people to have to not be able to make those positive choices in your life. What were you saying about that?
Well, what I do is I come home and I watch the evening news, and before I know it, it's midnight. Do you know what I mean? It's so easy. And I talk about financial things is the banks make it so easy to lose money. Like make it easy to save money, make it easy to save in a 401k. And they make it easy to use credit cards, and that's why people are in such trouble. And then they don't have the willpower to offset those things. So that's really what way I was reading your things. I was going, that's how it applies to my life, because simply, if things are too easy, and then I use willpower to try and change it. It's actually a negative, and it's actually negative and negative and negative, and I get weaker. So that was the power of that chapter. And also the Zorro effect, what you wrote about, is that don't try and take on too much. Just start really small. And I've been following that. I'm not trying to get back in shape and all that by running 25 miles a day. I'm just starting really small, but I'm doing it daily instead. So I get stronger. So your combination of willpower and focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want and being happier has really made a tremendous advantage in my personal life. So that's why I had you on this program. And even Kim is saying I'm nicer, right, Kim?
You are getting nicer, and one of the things, Shawn, I'm noticing too is I'm becoming more aware of all the negativity that's out there. I mean,
God, I just can't believe how negative I am.
Well, I'm not talking about you, Robert, but I'm talking about, like you mentioned, the news, Shawn. I hate to watch the news because all it is bad news, bad news, bad news. But then even driving into work today, I'm noticing my own mind going, somebody ran the red light. I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have run the red light. And I'm like, what the heck? And even within my own mind, the negative comments. So that alone, that awareness of the negativity in myself and around me has been huge.
Yeah, once again, I want to thank you for that comment on willpower, because I didn't realize the more I struggled with willpower, the more tired I got, and the worse life became. So powerful things in your book, because I've read it 3 times now, and each time it goes in deeper, so I understand it. And I catch myself, instead of being the charming individual, like to be, sometimes the most negative. Anyway, it's been fantastic. So once again, we're talking to Shawn Achor. He's the author of the book Happiness Advantage. You can contact him at happinessadvantage.com or also goodthinkinc.com. And it's a very, very important subject is how we use our brain and our spirit and our emotion to become more successful by being happy. Like I'll say it again. I was very happy when I had no money, and then for some reason I got unhappy when I got it. So it's really that's why your book is so important for everybody to read, because it's health, wealth, and happiness is what we stand for at the Rich Dad Company.
And I'd love what your whole premise of this book, Shawn, is that it's not once I get successful I'll be happy. Once I have $1 million I'll be happy. Once I get that promotion I'll be happy. It's that happiness comes first. You get happy. Your happiness fuels your success. Your happiness fuels all your material wants. All of that. So here's what I want to ask is that you say happiness is a choice. So let's say somebody's out there right now and they're like, well, I'm not very happy today. I'm having a bad day.
I'm happy.
Yeah. What can I do right now? I'm having a bad day. My boss is a real jerk. What could I do right now? One little thing.
I think everyone at every moment can find something negative to think about, but we can also have the access to joy at any moment. So even that person with a negative boss, I'm willing to bet there are 3 good things that are actually going on in that person's life, that they stop for 45 seconds to think about those 3 things that they're grateful for. It actually steals resources in their brain from the part of their brain that's frustrated, that's negative, and actually returns it to the part of your brain that actually creates happiness, that scans the world for opportunities. And when we find that people actually look for the things they're grateful for, not only do they start finding more things that they're grateful for, but you actually just turned on the front part of your brain, which is the part of the brain that helps you get your work done faster so you can get home. You see solutions, you get promoted so you don't have to work with that same bad boss anymore. You can actually be the good boss. And as a result of that, I think gratitude could actually be the starting point to help us get that leverage to start to choose happiness and use that happiness as the greatest competitive advantage in the modern economy.
Once again, Shawn, I want to thank you very much for your great book and your work and the contribution you're making to the world. Just keep up the good work. That's all I can say, because if you make people happy, that's
a pretty big gift.
Fantastic
That's a pretty
gift.
big gift.
Fantastic gift.
And your website is happinessadvantage.com. Please check it out. And the book is The Happiness Advantage. And the latest book is Before Happiness, which I'm going to go out and get as well.
So thank you, Shawn.
Thank you, Robert and Kim. This was so much fun.
Oh, it was
Thank you.
excellent. Thanks.
We'll
It was
do
the
it
best.
again.
Yes, we will.
Sounds great.
Okay.
All right.
So when we come back, we're going to Ask Robert, a very popular part of our program. Is where you get to ask me the questions.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome to Capital City from the mind of Robert Kiyosaki, the smash hit resource management game where you buy, sell, and trade your way to victory. Play with up to 5 friends, or take on the evil supercore robots. You can corner the market on coffee shops and rule the Java jungle. Buy fixer-uppers and use elbow grease to make big old piles of cash. Or you can do what I do and buy up all the florists. Why? Because flowers represent beauty and nature, which nourishes my delicate sensibilities. Choose from 11 crazy vehicles. Float like a cloud in the hovercraft. Crush the competition in the tank. Or drive the bus, because you like buses. This is your Capital City. Shape it how you want. Capital City, now available on the App Store and Google Play. Capital City, it's not just fun, it's stupid fun.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to this program on your time and your schedule. We have a Rich Dad Radio app available at the App Store. And you can listen to this program again because all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. And if you want to be happier, please listen to this program, but also get Shawn Achor's book, The Happiness Advantage. His website is thehappinessadvantage.com. So thank you to Shawn, because it's really helped me a lot. As we said, people will say, well, I'd rather be happy than rich, and our saying is, why can't you have both? And many people say, well, money doesn't make you happy. they must live someplace under a log or something. I mean, they've never been homeless or had, no money. And how can you say money doesn't make you happy? And then it says, then when I'm rich, then I'll be happy. And those are all, I would say, misinterpretations inside your brain. So again, thank you to Shawn.
I think that's one of the main ones. When I get rich, I'll be happy. When I get successful, I'll be happy. When I build my business, I'll be happy. And what Shawn is saying, no, happiness doesn't come from outside. Happiness comes from inside. And it's the little tiny things you can do, like, 3 things you're grateful for right now. What are those 3 things? Or journal about a positive experience. It takes 2 minutes. It's easy. It's easy. That's the key.
So once again, you can submit your questions to Rich Dad Radio. Ask Robert. And before I begin, I want to say thank you to my sweetheart, Kim, because we do practice what we preach here at Rich Dad. And every morning now, Kim and I get up and we journal and we meditate and we do the things that Shawn says to do, and it's made a tremendous advantage. But I think the reason Kim and I have maintained our sanity through some of the worst times, some of the worst horrifying, business things and all this is because we do work on ourselves. It's called personal development, working on ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And those are key. So Kim and I do practice what we preach. Thank you for being a great partner.
Thank you. Well, we live by a saying of, for things to change, first I must change. So things outside aren't going to change, but we can change ourselves.
Plus, not just do as I say, we do what we say. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's the thing. And, this morning Kim and I got up and we were working away, journaling away before we came to work here. So we work on ourselves before we work on our businesses. So, Melissa, what's the first question for Ask Robert?
Our first question today comes from Andrew in Norman, Oklahoma. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, what techniques do you use to recover from business setbacks? How long does it take you to get over a defeat?
That's a great question, because one of the reasons most people don't become entrepreneurs or don't go for their dreams is because they're afraid of failing. Like sometimes it's better not to go for your dream because then at least you can't say you didn't get it. And I meet so many people who sell themselves short every single day. They go to a job they hate, or they work for less money, or they don't want to take a risk, they don't want to make a mistake. That's what they taught in school. So the way we help ourselves is, number one, Kim and I have I hate to use the word, but it's kind of a coach, an emotional coach. And she's on speed dial. So if Kim and I have an upset amongst each other the last 45 minutes, we call her, right?
That's correct.
Because we don't want to play therapist. It's your fault and all that. And as Shawn Achor wrote about, it's an internal focus versus an external focus. A lot of times people take their internal frustrations out on the person they love the most. The other thing we do is, if I knew this, I would have had both books. One is called The Happiness Advantage, and the other book is called The Miracle Morning, who we'll be interviewing sometime down the road. But those 2 books for less than $40 can keep you sane in an insane world. The most important thing is the focus goes not outside of you, goes inside of you. What I always say to people is no such thing as a bad economy. There's only a bad personal economy. In other words, if somebody's poor, it has nothing to do with the economy. It has to do with their viewpoint on the economy, their skill sets, their mindsets. So how do we help poor people? Well, teach them how to help themselves. That's kind of my belief. Okay.
Yeah, and I think all of this is why, he asked, how do you get over a defeat, is all of the personal development work we do on ourselves. We get over a defeat when we understand the lesson from the mistake or the lesson from the failure. So, for example, when we were building the cash flow game, we did a beta test and some things didn't work. And some people would go, oh, my God, it didn't work. We went, no. Okay, now we know what we didn't know. Now let's add this. Now let's make it better. So it's finding that lesson. But without all the personal development work that we do on ourselves, I don't know that we'd be able to find those lessons quite so easily.
Yes, but as I said to Shawn, there's a part of me that's really sick.
Oh, we all know that.
Is when I see somebody suffering and in pain, I kind of get happy about that. And I get kind of happy when I see people who really think all you have to do to be successful is have good grades and be an accountant or an attorney. Because as Shawn says, they're some of the most unhappy people on earth. And some of the worst people Kim and I have met are accountants and attorneys, and they're miserable. And that kind of makes me happy. But that's why I haven't given them Shawn's book or Hal Achor's book, Miracle Morning, because I kind of enjoy them being I meet so many people that way. They think their good grades entitles them to be smarter and better than anybody else. Well, screw them. You know what I mean? All they do is inspire me to go after them. So that's what kind of makes me happy. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Will in Seattle, Washington. Favorite book, Midas Touch. He says, Robert, what personality traits do you seek in your business partners? How long does it take for you to be comfortable with a potential business partner?
That's a fantastic question because it's been probably my weakness. Kim and I are kind of too trusting, and we take people for their word or what they say, and that's probably the most dangerous thing we can do. And looking back upon my history, it's that it's dealing with people who are not good for their word. What they say and what they do are two different things. Every con man has a smiling face, if you know what I mean. So the best way to handle that is change myself. I can't change the world, but I can change myself and get wiser. You have basically, Shawn writes about this in his book. He says you got three choices. You can either get depressed, you can say, well, it doesn't make any difference, or you can take whatever happened that's bad and be positive about it. It makes you better. So you have a choice. And that's why Shawn's book is so fantastic, because Kim and I have had some of the worst partners on planet Earth. These people should be in jail for what they've done. But they don't think that way. They think what they've done is perfectly normal. That's all. We all know a lot of people have screwed up. So rather than try and protect myself from them, what I should do is change myself. Any comments on that, Kim?
Yeah, well, I know some of the problems we've had with partners is two things. Is one, like we have our values, Robert, and we've talked about our values a lot. So our values, for example, lifelong learning is a value of ours. Working on ourselves, personal development is a value of ours. Our partners go, we've had partners that have said, I agree with that. I agree with that. But they don't practice any of it.
And they have the most effed up families. That's the way you can tell really quickly. If their families are effed up, they're effed up too. You know what I mean? But we're all effed up.
In some way or another, yes,
so
we are.
What do you do about it? That's why what Shawn's book is, and this guy, Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, we highly recommend those books because it's looking inside at you and changing you so you can change the world. Remember, there's no such thing as a bad economy. There's only bad personal economies, and there's only rich personal economies. No matter what happens in the economy, Kim and I will be rich. No matter what happens, no matter what problems hit us, Kim and I will handle them because we take care of ourselves first.
Yep. And which also makes one other point to the partners is we also have a rule that if a potential partner needs money, we don't want them as a partner.
Yeah,
because
we don't want
then,
them if you need money.
Yeah, they're going to then make decisions based on what's going to put money in their pocket versus what's best for the company. So good question, Will. Thanks.
And the other thing that Mike Sullivan, who is a CEO, said he's an attorney, happy attorney.
He's a happy guy.
Because he's no longer
because he's not an attorney and not practicing.
But he said that because he handled family court a lot, he found out that a spouse, be it husband or wife, can lie for 14 months. But after 14 months, they can't lie anymore after that, and the real person comes out. So I would call it kind of a rule of thumb, the 14-month rule. Don't become a partner unless you've been through thick or thin for 14 months. Just kind of a guideline. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's kind of a guideline. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Scott in San Francisco, California. It says, Robert, I manage a team of 8 sellers in a real estate business. My boss holds me responsible for my entire team's performance, even though I don't hire my team. If it were up to me, I would have hired only about half of my team. I think I'm being put in an unwinnable situation. What advice do you have?
That's a fantastic question. It's also a great opportunity because if you can deal with salespeople, you're learning to be a great leader. But in his book, Happiness Advantage, I think it's that book. I read so many books. But Shawn writes about how they hire salespeople. And what they found out, it had nothing to do with college degrees and all that stuff. When they hire salespeople, it was generally their attitude. Are they happy people? How they handle setbacks and all this stuff? And it was some company like New York Life or something like that. And they did a study on them, and then by hiring happier salespeople, they got better results. I think because you were in sales too, right?
Yeah. Well, and then he talked about like a lot of the bosses, they have negative incentives for their employees, and they found that their production of this, when they do the negative incentives, their production goes down. But when you do positive incentives and acknowledge people and give them more positive messaging, their production goes up.
So my answer would be I would read Happiness Advantage and then show your boss that, because your boss wants the same thing you do. They want production. They want people who are happy making money. And if you have people who are not happy making money, you infect the whole team. So show your boss this book. He's guy's a Harvard graduate. It's the Harvard Happiness course. And if that doesn't change your boss, look for a new boss. So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki of the Rich Dad Radio Show. I want to thank you for listening. You can submit your questions to at Rich Dad Radio, Ask Robert. And once again, the whole purpose of the Rich Dad Radio Show and the Rich Dad Company is to have you be happier, healthier, and wiser.
You've been listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. To learn more about the good news and bad news about money, go to richdadradio.com.
This is what it sounds like when your brother gets arrested after school for having coke in his backpack. This is the sound of my fist hitting the wall. The sound of me hating myself for being happy he got caught, because at least for one night he won't be using. And this is what it sounds like when he's back at school right where he started. 1 year sober.
If you're in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org. Your story can change someone else's.
From the partnership at drugfree.org and drugfreeaz.org.
The Rich Dad Radio Show now goes where you go. Access and download shows with the Rich Dad Radio app, now available in the App Store and coming soon for Android. Access the entire Rich Dad Radio archive and listen to the shows you want when you want. Because as you know, repetition is how you learn.